Alright, we are entering the final matchup for the first round of the European bracket of the Trash Bowl tournament. This is Alex facing off against Universe. And Alex is bringing his Quest Shaman right now. Universe coming up with the Midrange Hunter. Universe also has a Murloc Shaman and Token Druid in his lineup with a Combo Priest that was banned. And Alex also brought Combo Priest and Mech Hunter, and his Control Warrior was banned. Starting off strong with a Spring Paw. Arguments to be made for the Timberwolf, but you really just don't want to put it down an empty board, so I definitely understand the reason here. Quest turn 1 from the Quest deck, no one is surprised. And now we're probably gonna see the Timberwolf, and maybe even the Lynx. Does run into Sandstorm Elemental hard, so maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you just want a hero power. And of course you can't guarantee that your opponent has a Sandstorm Elemental, but you just don't want to overcommit on the board. And honestly, you keep that Lynx, yeah. That's a good choice there. Now the question is, if you're Alex, do you Sandstorm Elemental this turn? And I could see him just play the Questing Explorer. It has good stats, it allows him to make trades, and no, he decides to overload with the Sandstorm Elemental. Still being able to play the Explorer next turn, of course. About as mana efficient, so yeah, there's an argument to be made here. Tracking goes into another Spring Paw. Probably the best choice there, especially considering the given situation. Uses both of his Lynxes to trade into the Sandstorm Elemental, and Alex got the tempo right now, but he is overloaded, so he can only play 2 mana's worth. And I assume Animal Companion is coming down next, because you can't really make anything happen with the Hyena and the 1 Lynx, so that's what you do. Do you play the Lynx now? I don't think so. But yeah, Alex on his turn again. And this looks just like a simple Novice Engineer and maybe just Hero Power, because you don't really have anything right now. Box Launcher, you could Box Launcher the Questing Explorer or even the Novice Engineer, but you don't waste your coin for that kind of shenanigans, so the real consideration here is whether or not you're gonna hit into the Leok, decides to do it, which arguably is what you want to do, although there's an argument to be made to not do it, but again, especially with the Healing Totem, it's of course very reasonable. Lynx comes down. So does the Hyena. Lynx can of course kill the Questing Explorer, and then the Leo can kill either one of the other 2 things, or maybe even hit face. I don't like hitting the Novice Engineer that much because it makes it very vulnerable, although you know your opponent has methods of removing it at 2 or 3 health as well, so it's not really a big deal. Former Champ Mutate seems like a good play here, although that also once again doesn't deal with the Hyena. You could coin the Fire Elemental, that would deal with it. You could also just play, yeah, exactly, a Flesh Shaper. That one of course can't be mutated if you're hitting into the Hyena, but I think that's still worth it. And we might just see the first Highmane come down here. Very classic card in Midrange Hunter, very strong, and the Wyvern from Unleash the Beast doesn't really do much this turn. So you might as well play the Hyena with the Highmane with the better stats and also better board stickiness. Kalerite comes down. You're gonna see a Witchy Lackey. Now, that's actually a really good one in this deck because you run mutates by design because you have so much stuff that is worth mutating. So you might as well go for the Witchy Lackey there. Decides to mutate his Flesh Shaper instead and might mutate it again. Anubis Warbringer, pretty good card, buffs everything on the hand by +3/+3 when it gets killed, and Alex definitely has stuff on his hand that he wouldn't mind being buffed here. It's not a big hand, but it's definitely worth it. We see the Wyvern come down, as well as a Timberwolf. The Wyvern of course has to take a trade, and I assume the Highmane goes face, yeah. And yeah, this is where you start pushing now as the Hunter. You have a lot of damage, you know with the Dire Frenzies you have damage on hand. You're telling your opponent, deal with this, because if he doesn't, if he leaves the 6-2 alive, for example, which of course he doesn't have to because he has Fire Elemental, but you don't know that, then all of a sudden you can produce 12 points of damage next turn, and you're almost at lethal. Of course, as I said, Fire Elemental does deal with this. It can kill the Wyvern if you need to, although so can most lackeys, yeah. You see a Goblin Lackey here, in combination with a Rat, can also kill it. And you might just hit the Anubiseth into the High Main, and of course the Lackey into the Timberwolf. And the Anubiseth, first, good play. Buffs the Lackey. It's almost like he has the Khan, although it's just this one Lackey. And gets the ability to trade off all of the, well, existing board. Of course, you do still have the Hyenas, but which is why I said it was a good play. And now you still have 10 points of damage from the Hunter's perspective, which is still a 2-turn clock, except that you know your opponent can deal with one of the Hyenas. Or pretty much can at least assume that they can. Although if you put it all in one, double Dire Frenzy, a little aggressive, but definitely would be hard to remove. If you go double Dire Frenzy, you have yourself an 8/8. You could just go face with both, and then again your opponent has to deal with it, but decides to go for the more traditional board-centric playstyle, not polluting his deck with random 5/5 Hyenas. Obviously the more solid play, but also the slower play. But you do still have those Dire Frenzies, and those might end up saving you the game here. Well, saving, I say, when the Hunter is clearly ahead, but those might end up winning you the game, I should say. Yeah, the Wasp is on hand for Alex without the lackeys to support it. That is always a little awkward. Again, Fire Elemental still there. Definitely capable of killing one thing. Hero Power doesn't really help with that too much, but you might wanna. You could have also played Former Champ for board control here. And which one do you prefer? I guess it purely depends on what your goals are. And your goal right now is to minimize damage right now, especially against a Hunter who you know has Kill Command and Dire Frenzy for effectively direct pushing damage, plays the Box Lodger for the board control. And now we're once again looking at potentially 10 damage from the Hunter. Once again, not quite enough. But at that point you're saying, draw your Life Drinkers or die in 2 turns, and that seems tempting. Although, once again, maybe the Wyvern is the more straightforward play here, but that does not get you the game back, and honestly, I think the Wyvern might be the worst play here. It's probably High Main over Wyvern, but again, I can see the appeal of double Dire Frenzy. Here's a situation where you might actually want to spread it for once. Although, I can definitely see how, if you're taking trades, at least you're losing one minion is what he's saying here. And again, yeah, 3 damage, that's 2 turns. Doesn't draw the Engineer. And now, of course, you have to clear the board if you're Alex. And, okay, he goes fishing for the Life Drinker, that makes sense. Sludge Slurper, and another Sludge Slurper. I mean, you can play those, that's very reasonable. Gets a Faceless and a Cobalt Lackey. Cobalt Lackey very helpful here potentially. Probably he's gonna play the other Lackey, although he might just play he might play Lackey and Wasp. Decides to, if it looks like, go that route, although he would have to kill something first, at which point, now you might as well play Cobalt Lackey. Because the Wasp deals 6. And again, he hasn't found any healing yet, and that might be what loses him this game. But the moment the Life Drinker can come down, it's also kind of won. And also he's saying, I'm dealing damage to you now. You have to, and that's lethal. That is lethal. That, Unleash the Hounds, is easy lethal. Universe going up 1-0 against Alex. Of course, now Universe limited to a Token Druid and Murloc Shaman. Alex has still all 3 decks available. Question is, does he go with the Quest Shaman again? Does he switch? He seems to generally be of the philosophy of switching. I believe he has pointed out a couple of times, but then again, he also said that if you put up a strong performance, you might want to keep it, and that arguably was a strong performance with just very unfortunate draws here and there. Queuing up the second match, and it's Shaman on Shaman. Alex deciding to stick with his Quest Shaman. He knows it's relatively strong against the more aggressive decks that Universe is bringing, and he knows that what lost him that game there was that he never drew the answers he needed. So he decides to stick with it. Universe, of course, as I said, also playing Shaman, but that's, as I mentioned earlier, a Murloc Shaman, which is, as I said, aggressive. And I was about to say, if Universe you're faced with, do you keep War Leaders? Do you keep Bloodlust? And he decides to try playing for the curve, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Corrupt the Waters coming down turn 1, of course. Now, Tidecaller seems like a good turn 1 play, but also is a little bit risky because it might be killed by something. Decide to play it. Of course, what would kill it? Probably just something with lackeys, and that's not going to happen this turn, so very sensible choice here. You can now play the Tidehunter, and you probably want to take the trade for the Evil Totem there. That's the question always, how aggressive do you want to be? Do you hit the 3 damage in the face? Kills the totem knowing that it provides too many answers, which is fair enough. That's pretty much what it does. Sandstorm Elemental and Goblin Lackey clearing perfectly if Alex so desires it. Does not right now. Very sensible. You know that your opponent is planning to go a lot wider. So you leave the unimportant, not so dangerous stuff alive for the time being. Allowing for a better Sandstorm Elemental turn. Now, Wall Leader on hand, probably not seeing played this turn. But you do see a Sludge Slurper here. Witchy Lackey. You probably put on the Tidehunter, which means you attack with that first. Or you just don't play it at all this turn and maybe you play Toxin somewhere. Decides to go with the trade here to protect his higher attack minions. Generally a reasonable strategy. Now the question is, do you play the Toxfin down here or don't you? Interestingly enough, the only thing that would survive the Sandstorm Elemental also, of course, does run into MC Tech. The question is just, if you're Alex, do you even want to MC Tech this relatively small board, or do you just rather deal with most of it with the Sandstorm Elemental, leave a 1-1 on board? Favorable trades, that seems reasonable. Still leaves the hero power open for potentially a taunt or anything else, really. Healing Totem, very underrated, of course, because, as we've seen before, you can take a trade, it heals your stuff back up. Actually pretty useful. And now, yeah, Universe, tough position. Almost has to play the War Leader. We'll take the trade, and Alex doesn't have an answer this turn. But a War Leader is only scary because of the support around it, and there isn't that much there. And he pretty much knows it, because you don't really play a War Leader in that situation unless you really don't have much else to play. Tastefin, really good pickup here, but now you have to plan to smack into the face really soon. And what you as Universe don't know here is, of course, that there is a Fire Elemental coming up that just kills a Tastefin. The idea here with the coin was to roll for a Soulflow Totem to protect his stuff further, but again, Fire Elemental deals with that handily. Was maybe worth considering mutating the Fire Elemental, because it is also understated, and of course Absolute High Roll Storm 1 Champion kills the Steering Totem, but not absolutely necessary, and former champ on hand, for example, being a way better target, so very conservative, but definitely a good play to not do that right now. Obviously it becomes more tempting as there's more stuff on the board. We do see the opportunity for a Mogu Flesh Shaper this turn, which could either take out the Fire Elemental to take you back the board, or take out the Healing Totem, and then you could evolve it to have a big minion on board. It's always a tough trade-off, but since you pretty much primarily run the mutates for Mogu Flesh Shaper, I think you might go for the Totem here. Because you're saying, okay, what can your big thing do? It can trade off one of my things per turn. I'd rather have something big now. Cauldron Elemental, by far not the best 8-drop you can get, but hey, it has reasonable stats. There's worse ones for sure. We've seen already the Heroic Innkeeper in the last game, so definitely sensible here. And this does, of course, run into the MC Tech a little bit as well. If you're Alex, do you trade off the Grimscale Oracle and MC Tech? Maybe. Ethereal could be really big as well. we see the Zap, which is useful, or the Witch's Brew for survivability. Decides to go for the Witch's Brew, a little bit of a slower game plan, and that allows us to hero power MC Tech, and that is probably what it's going to do. Taking up 2 things, still worth considering killing the Grimscale first, because you don't want a 1-1 necessarily, and that's one of, for you, the 2 worst minions. Of course, for your opponent, the Searing Totem is less useful, but that's exactly why you keep it on the board. And takes a Mermy and a Searing Totem. That was the worst thing that could have happened here. And now he goes for mutating the Fire Elemental. Furious Etten. That's tough. No Toxfin on hand right now. And yes, there is a War Leader and a Slurper and everything. But you probably end up running the Cauldron. Oh yeah, that's nice. Cobalt, Cauldron Elemental goes in there. Then you can evolve the Cobalt, the Cauldron Elemental because it's at 2 health. You can Witchy Lackey it. That is definitely a good possibility here. Now we don't have the board space to do it unless you take another trade. Because you probably want to evolve it. But again, you can also take another trade somewhere. Yeah, goes for the trade. As if you could hear me. And this is one of the better opportunities for a Witchy Lackey in this deck. Alexstrasza discovered, well, not mechanically discovered, but you know what I mean. Definitely an upgrade from a 7/2 to an 8/8. Still one of the weaker 9-drops, although you kind of expect to get an 8/8 because all of the 8/8 or 4/12 because all of the dragons are set that way, so that's pretty much what you expect. And yeah, as a Quest Shaman, try not to get overrun here, so starts taking trades. MC Tech comes down again, so that is just very unfortunate. Your opponent has 2 back-to-back MC Techs when you're the Murloc Shaman. Gets reasonably good picks, but does not get the Alexstrasza. And that's gonna hurt. Because he can't deal with it. And he might even keep the Lackey alive, that's more of a minor inconvenience. But now you're doing math. Now you're looking at that Bloodlust. Of course, single Bloodlust, 6 extra damage, not quite gonna be lethal. 15 points, that's 7 off. If you had the mana to do it too, that would be lethal. So now I think what you do is you just play all the Ghost Lights you can. Maybe one Amalgam. A little less efficient with the Ghost Lights, but you're trying at every turn to be like, okay, if I have 2 minions on board, I have lethal with my Bloodlust. Decides to go for a hero power. And goes early on the Bloodlust. It might be a little unnecessarily aggressive. You could have probably gotten away with just hitting face and establishing such a wide board that your opponent can't trade off everything because the Alexstrasza has a lot of health. And you might get a good Bloodlust turn next turn. Then again, you still have Bloodlust, but now your opponent can trade everything off. So, again, it's a trade-off. And we see Alex at 7 health, once again not having any healing. He does, however, this time have a lot of stuff on his board to deal with the opposing board. You don't have as much direct face damage from hand coming for the... Oh, he has the Witch's Brew that I discovered. I was looking for life triggers there. Decides to go for that, and then will, of course, be able to take back the board a little bit. Might have been a worthwhile consideration to evolve the MC Tech. Might have also been maybe an idea to not do it. Of course not because the 4-drop low roll here, but rather because any 6-drop from a 1/1, that being the former champ, would probably be better than the Explodinator here, or any 4-drop for that matter. But again, it's just more a little bit unfortunate. And again, if you're Universe, quadruple Ghostlight, single Grimscale, your opponent can only deal with 4 minions, at least according to what he has on board right now. So you're keeping 1 minion alive, and that is 1 minion that can hit next turn. Granted, it's not the greatest, but you're trying to push damage where you can. And of course, Alex having the options here to completely take care of the board. I don't think he's looking for lethal quite yet. But he definitely could. Because with the Flame Elemental you have 6 damage. 12, 15, 16 on board right now. Now, of course, with the Lackey, that is quote-unquote just 2 damage less. And then you also have the Goblin to compensate for that. So the Lackey still is very close to lethal. Could have maybe drawn into a lethal there somewhere. But, of course, you know you don't have to win this turn, so why risk everything going for a lethal that you absolutely don't need? Instead, he decides to play it safe, control the board, keeps a lot of direct damage on hand. So he probably knows he has it next turn. Hero power, Cobalt Lackey even, or not necessarily even, and Flame Elemental, or Fire Elemental I should say, is very good here. And if you're Universe, the only choice you have is Underbelly into Nightmare Amalgam into whatever the Underbelly gives you. And there's some damage, but again, right now you're not looking for damage. Right now you're not looking not to lose, and there's arguably the biggest board he could have established here, but not maybe necessarily the most spectacular thing. And now I feel like, Alex, you might look into lethals. You have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on board. You have, in theory, 12 on hand, but the problem is it's 1 mana short. Which means he's obviously not going for it. He's gonna, once again, slow play this a little bit. Where's that Wasp going? Not into the face. Understandable, but also very conservative play. But you know that Quest Shaman isn't, Murloc Shaman isn't going to get you anywhere from 23 health to 0 in 1 turn. So he just plays for the board. And that's fair enough. Exactly. Now, Universe, what you gonna do? Sludge Slurper? What Lackey saves you here? Probably none. Maybe Ethereal. Probably the best one. Voltaic Burst. Interesting. Voltaic Burst and Totemic Smash, both probably reasonable ways to at least deal somewhat with the board. If you are really worried about dying this turn, you might even consider Voltaic Burst Bloodlust, but that's probably just a little too crazy. Tough choice here, nothing really that impactful, and he's gonna take his time on that choice. Goes with the Voltaic Burst, plays it right away. Cold Seer, not the most effective it has ever been, but you just need the stats on the board, and doesn't even take the trades for the 1/1s. Now Alex probably has lethal. I was about to say I didn't do the math yet, but he has, so there is lethal. And he didn't even need the hero power. So that ties up the game at 1 apiece. Universe staying on the Murloc Shaman, Alex going to the Combo Priest. Really good hand for, or reasonably good hand at the very least for both of them. And it looks like Alex keeps it. And so does Universe. So both very confident in their arguably really good hands. Now if you're Alex, you retroactively wish you had have removed 1 silence, but again, hindsight is 20/20, and okay, he decides to coin out the Mermy knowing that he has a turn 2 play. Makes sense, you don't have that many uses for the coin, but you are also running out of cards. So yeah, silence already looking very reasonable on the Tidecaller if you want it. And that appears to be where we're going. Trade, of course, because healing is very good for you, so you want that. Grimscale Oracle does allow to push through that Tolvir. Sludge Slurper might get you something that does it even more effectively, so you probably want to play the Slurper first, and depending on what you get, then Grimscale. Goblin Lackey does the job. And you can even kill the Northshire Cleric, which arguably you want. And that gives you, well, the board back, but with 2 1/1s. So we see the Acolyte coming down, understandably so. And now if you're Universe, you might just play the Tidehunter and go face. I don't like the Fish Flinger too much here. You really didn't need it. You could have gone Tidehunter, it would have had the same amount of stats, but you're giving your opponent a play who you know doesn't have that many cards. It's just a little awkward. We might see extra arms here. We do, in fact. And Alex, of course, going for the efficient trading here. Inner Fire on hand, so we have more arms than Inner Fire already. Might lend itself to some combo later for the Combo Priest. And now it's Universe doing some math for the Mogul Flesh Shaper, and the math says you can play everything but the Fish Flinger and the Soul of Murloc. So yeah, it's Tidehunter, 2 mana for 2 minions. Grimscale Oracle, 1 mana for 1 minion. And there comes the 1 mana Mogul Flesh Shaper. And that's really good, and that's why you run it in this deck. And we've already seen Mutate is also in this version, and those 2 cards just seem almost inherently linked together in a way. And now you have the board. And now if you're Alex, you look into what the fuck do I do with this board? Is it worth silencing the Grimscale Oracle? I don't think so. Goes for the Psychopomp, rolls into his taunt, arguably what he's looking for. Does end up silencing the Grimscale, because he now knows, especially with the taunt on the board, that he now needs to waste more resources to get through there. I think now is when you play one of the Murlocs and then Soul of the Murlocs to keep your board steady. And if you're only playing one, you might as well play Underbelly Angler, although I can see why you wouldn't want to play it without anything to proc off. So Fishlinger definitely also makes a little bit of sense here, but again, giving your opponent resources, you don't worry about it that much, but you might still worry about it a little bit. I think the Mogul might go in there. As a matter of fact, the Mogul has to pretty much go in there, alongside the Tidehunter probably, and then just one of the 1/1s. If you're really clever, the Goblin specifically goes into the 3/1 Tolvir. Very minor misplay here because you have... Oh, never mind. He's going to take that trade as well. Then it's okay. Because otherwise it would have been a very minor misplay because of the synergies, but decides to clear the board as much as he can. And of course, if you're Alex, you must think, one of those 2 cards, well, one of those is Murloc, but the other one, unknown. If that's Bloodlust, you're fucked. Because Bloodlust right now is 21 plus the board, which the board is, that is 9, so it's 30 points of damage. And if you're Alex, that concerns you, but also, you know you can't beat that, so that means you just establish board. If you can't beat the Bloodlust, that may or may not be there, you just play as if there is none, because that's all you can do. And we see him think a little bit here. Of course, do I take the trade? Don't I take the trade? If he takes the trade into the Fish Flinger, that is gonna reduce the board with Bloodlust down to 28. If he kills one of the 1/1s, that's gonna bring it down to 26. If he then heals, he can actually live through the Bloodlust. But then he's still gonna die very soon, so I'm not sure if it's worth considering that Bloodlust turn too much. He doesn't, he decides to build a board instead. Singles well played, although, as we know, not actually over yet. I think the Grimscale Oracle is really good here. Yeah, that's what it's called, right? The Cold Seer, my bad. I was like, that doesn't sound right. The Cold Seer being very strong here, of course. It gives you a lot of stuff on the board, and I don't think you want to trade here. And if you would have probably wanted to hit the Fish Flinger in. I know that Combo Priest does Combo Priest things, but you were on the aggressive side before, and all of a sudden you're out of cards. And you can play Scargle, Underbelly, and Cold Light, and say, okay, I still have a board, deal with this, but you could have started pushing this turn. And it's always something to weigh, but I think you might have just wanted to play a little more aggressively here. Tidecaller, a good pickup, although already a relatively wide board, and Alex sitting there with nothing, so maybe Universe strategy does pay off. Alex all of a sudden playing for Murloc synergy. That's what double Fish Flinger does to you. Going back up to 26 health. And Toxfin coming up. Doesn't seem that relevant, but I think you play the Tidecaller now and see what you get. And of course you're hoping for your War Leader. And all of a sudden that would be pretty big. Decides not to do it right now. Yeah, I would have agreed that that seemed like a mistake, yeah. Because if you got a War Leader, you might have just been able to push a lot of damage. Got the Amalgam. Not exactly what you're looking for, but there's another pickup here, and I mean, that's a good one draw. 3-2 Death Rattle, draw 2 Murlocs. That seems relevant, and he deals 6 points of damage this turn, and again, Alex has nothing. That's arguably huge, but it doesn't deal with all of the board here. Divine Spirit comes up first. We'll probably end up inner firing something as well. Inner fires the Pyro. Since none of the opponent's minions had less health than attack at the point of casting it, so that makes sense. Otherwise you would have wanted to do that because you don't get anything out of it. Just to delay the game a little bit, but you're wasting a lot of your resources that are intended to make you win, so as to not lose right now. You definitely play the charge here. You're just trying to find lethal right now. I mean, you're also trying to establish a big board, of course, so the Cold Light does make sense here. So let's go with the Tasty Fin for the stats. Picks up the Sir Finley. Maybe not. I mean, I guess you're not gonna play long enough so as to trigger him. And there's the War Leader. And let me do some quick math here, but that looks pretty convincing. Yeah, that was 18. That was 2 off, but Alex knew he didn't have a way to come back from that. And that brings Universe up 2-1. Now what that means for Alex is he knows he's facing Token Druid next. That means he can bring whatever deck he feels most confident with against Token Druid to go for the draw here out of the 2 that he has remaining. Is it going to be the Combo Priest again? Is it going to be Mech Hunter? I don't know. But he's going to play whatever he feels more confident with first, and then he's going to try, once it's tied up again, to then somehow win. Decides to go with the Priest again. And the Pyro is really huge in this matchup, because you know your opponent has a lot of 1 and 2 health minions. So that Pyro is gonna save you the board at least once. Tolvir, really good to control the board as well. Nothing on Universe's hand for right now. That sucks. You really want to have a play turn 1 or 2. Now, granted, coin landscaping on 2 is perfectly valid, but it still hurts. And I think that must be the play unless you draw a 2-drop here, and Power of the Wild is actually a strong argument. I personally would have played Power of the Wild here, although maybe Bees? Probably not Landscaping because that's not a good trade for you. Bees actually probably the strongest play because it leaves you with a 1-1 and takes care of the minion that you know your opponent can heal. But again, that's a little bit of preference play. I think Alex is going to profit off of that right now because he can pick off one of the Treants. He got some healing in, which got some draw. And overall, I think Bees would have been the best choice there. You can still do it this turn. You can now do it on the Northshire Cleric, as a matter of fact, if you really want to. Again, which one do you kill? Maybe the Tolvir to get some face damage. Maybe the Cleric to prevent any future healing. So that's to go for the Cleric. And I think you just pass the turn there, because if you hit the Treant in, it doesn't do anything. And now if you're Alex, you can start going extra arms, power word shield, and start looking into pushing some damage into the face, and just also providing that resistance. Decides to go with the slower but more protective play of just attacking with a 12-year, healing the 12-year, playing another 12-year. And we say Acorn Bearer, that's what you want to turn 1. And now it doesn't do that much, but you're probably still gonna have to play it. Acorn Bearer, and then Power of the Wild for the Panther looks like the best play there. Light Warden picked up. That would be a lot bigger if you had Circle of Healing, of course. And Power Word Shield and also the healing, just offering some really good trades here. And I think you just take those, yeah, you just take the trades. Heal back up, start building your Light Warden. And now you have a threat. And while Universe is definitely not mad about having the 1/1s on hand, because they help setting up a board again, and finally draws a 5+ spell for the Garden Gnome. I think it's Garden Gnome and Squirrel this turn, trying to re-establish, and establishing a board is really what you need to do with the Token Druid. If you can't get that done, then you're losing. So yeah, we see that coming down, the widest possible board this turn. I don't think that was a mistake, but we'll see. Yeah, Starfall would have cleared most of the board. It wouldn't have dealt with the injured 12, with these last injured 12-year. It's worth considering for sure, but Alex had something to buff either way, and he's just gonna start taking trades, and he's probably not gonna trade off his injured his Light Warden, so you can still Starfall now, and now you have better trades available. So I don't think it was a misplay last turn. Especially because Starfall sets up your Garden Gnome. And that was important that you get that off at some point. So I actually agree with the order it ended up going in. You do take a little bit more damage, but you're not too worried about it. Although it does get you below the magical number of 28. Which is what is one of the numbers that the priest can relatively easily reach with the combo itself. Get a Blade Master, we get a healed right away. Alex now looking into the high health minions. Extra arms and inner fire on hand, not quite what you need, but potentially a way to do that as well. Mulch Muncher coming down, really good there. And I think it's just Power of the Wild, and at this point you might just go for, okay. I mean, I can see why you do that there. It's the same as if you go Power of the Wild for the buffs, which you probably would have with a board of 3 minions, and you're not reaching for the Force 8 anymore because you know you have it next turn. And once again, Alex a little behind here. The Wild Pyro deals with most of this board, but can you deal with everything? I mean, Silence, Topsy, Inner Fire, you can, but he doesn't want to, and I understand why you would not want to. Now the question is, do you still Topsy the Mulch Muncher so it can't kill your Pyro? The answer is no, because it can kill your Pyro. Because your Pyro would go down to 3 health. Landscaping seems like the perfect play here. Probably take the trade into the Pyro. I mean, definitely take the trade into the Pyro. And just pass the turn. And all of a sudden, you have a wide board. And that Pyro you really want them to deal with that Force 8 turn. So, not having that available is gonna be big. Force 8 with Savage Roar and Power of the Wild on hand, Alex has nothing. Now, those buffs would get everything to 5 attack. That is an easy 25 points of damage, plus 2 from the face, thanks to Savage Roar, and even 1 more from the Hero Power if you want to, so that's actually lethal. CZ2, and that is gonna be 3, 2, 1 for Universe. And Alex, as the last remaining member of TrashcanTV, also knocked out of the tournament. So that was the Alex versus universe matchup. And if you enjoyed this, of course, check out the rest of the Europe games already on our YouTube channel. Some of the Americas ones still coming up. And if you want to see those, of course, you probably want to subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, you know, like buttons, comments in the comment section. I'm pretty sure you know how YouTube works by now. And that's it.